Okay, so we're going to demonstrate simple combat in Forces of Evil. Here we have 4 adventurers, a fighter, a thief, a mage, and a priest, attacking this dungeon belonging to the fallen angel. She's got 2 rooms with minions in them. The first large cavern has 2 hobgoblins, 2 goblins, and a treasure, and her second small cavern only has 2 cockatrices. So, let's get started. First, the 4 adventurers are going to enter the dungeon entrance, but since there's no minions here and no treasure, nothing really happens. They're just going to immediately move on to the next room. Okay, so when they enter the large cavern, they're going to find these minions and this treasure. So the first thing that the player is going to need to do is look at the card. There's 4 front lines. They're going to need to organize into 4 front line battle formations. There's exactly 4 adventurers, so that means each adventurer is going to go into a front line. The player starts by assigning the heroes to the front lines as he sees fit. So fighter has to go in the front line first, and then let's put the thief underneath him, and then the priest, and then the mage at the bottom. Okay, once you've decided where these 4 front lines are, they're set. You cannot shuffle them around later. Okay, so then let's put, there we go. I can just barely see that. I'll move this down a little bit. Okay, now that's the attackers. They've been set. Next, you're going to set up your defending units. Now, let's do a hobgoblin in front of the fighter, and a hobgoblin in front of the mage, and 2 goblins here. And there we are. Now we've set them up. If there had been excess units on either side, they would go into these support positions. And depending on the unit, they might be able to give a bonus ability to the person in front of them. Adventurers usually do that. Okay, so next you need to form 2 dice pools according to what units there are. The fighter will roll a d8 because he's tier 3, and the rogue and the priest roll d6 because they're tier 2, and the mage, he's tier 1, so he only rolls a d4. Same thing with the goblins and hobgoblins. So there's our dice. Now, you can just pick them all up, roll them. Okay, now we have to assign these dice to their units. So the 7 has to go to the fighter, again, because that's his die. And the d4 has to go to the mage, because that's his die. And then these 2 d6s I can assign in any order I want. I'm going to give the 3 to the rogue and the 6 to the priest. Now, I have these 2 d6s, which I can assign however I want, and these 2 d4s, which I can also assign however I want. So let's give a 4 to this hobgoblin, a 5 to that hobgoblin, and the d4s both rolled a 3, so it doesn't matter. We'll do it that way. Okay, now we've assigned the hits. We go ahead and resolve the damage. The fighter has rolled higher than the hobgoblin, so he will hit the hobgoblin. Hobgoblin has 2 hit points, so we tilt him. He's now got 1 left. The goblin has a 3, and the rogue has a 3. In the event of a tie, they hit each other. So here the goblin is slain, and the rogue is slain. Now, this rogue is going to go into my prestige over here. Okay, continuing down the line. Let's see. The other 3, the priest kills this goblin, unfortunately, so he's dead and out of the game. And then the 5, this hobgoblin kills the mage. Also goes into my prestige. Okay, now the next thing we do is we check push through. What that means is if the heroes outnumber the defenders by 2 times or more, then anybody who's not locked in combat will move through, push through to the next room. However, we have 2 minions versus 2 heroes, so they stay put. Next thing that happens is I can choose to flee my units. I will not, because my cockatrices are far inferior to the hobgoblins. So we'll try to stick this one out. Okay, next thing that happens is you reposition starting from the heroes. So again, sort of the same thing as when they entered the room. Heroes will always move to a position that is in front of a unattacked or a minion that is not locked in combat. So here you see this hobgoblin is not engaged with anybody, so the priest moves here. Alright, These positions remain open. Remember, we determined that the positions were here at the beginning of battle, so those stay open. Not really of any importance during this combat. Okay, again, we get our dice pool, so fighter and 2 hobgoblins and priest. Okay, roll again, see what happens. Oh, that's good. The fighter only got a 1, and unfortunately the priest got a 5. Okay, so it doesn't really matter how we assign the 3 and the 4. This hobgoblin hits that fighter, and this priest hits that hobgoblin. So it's going to be very close, and I'm still at a bit of a disadvantage. Alright, again. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, so fighter got an 8, and priest got a 4, and I rolled the best I could. The hobgoblin's doing all they can. This fighter kills this hobgoblin. He's at his last hit point, so he's now dead. And this priest gets hit by the hobgoblin. Okay, again, we check for push through. You'll notice there are now 2 heroes versus 1 hobgoblin. That means the heroes will successfully push through. Any hero not locked in combat, and that means currently opposing a unit, so here the priest and the hobgoblin are both mutually locked in combat. Any hero not locked in combat is going to move to the next room. So this fighter says, alright, you mop up from here, I'm moving on, and he's going to go to the small cavern. Just set him aside for now. Alright, so that's not too terrible, assuming the hobgoblin can beat the priest. Let's see what happens. Alright, we got just 2 6-sided dice versus each other. Oh, look at that. They basically kill each other. They both have 1 hit point left, and they both hit each other. Alright, so the priest again goes in my prestige. Alright, now a fighter moves to the next room. He skips over the treasure. That's what happens when you push through, is they don't ransack the room. However, he quaffs his healing potion on the way, and he's now back to 2 hit points. Alright, now we've got 2 cockatrices versus that 1 fighter. This is going to be a tough one, but I'm going to see what happens after the first roll. Well, I have no choice, I have to. The first round of combat, you can't flee. Okay, so again, a D8 for the fighter, 2 D4s for the cockatrices. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's terrible. That was a good roll, but unfortunately the fighter got an 8, so he has killed this cockatrice. Alright, so that cockatrice is now gone. The fighter does not push through. However, at this point, I determined there is no reason for me to keep that cockatrice there just because he's going to most likely be killed. So I'm going to flee him. I want to keep him in my dungeon for the purposes of scoring, or just because I don't want to lose that minion needlessly. So I'm going to flee him, and I put him in limbo right here. So what happens next is this fighter pushes through. Well, he moves to the next room, but this is the last room, so he penetrates my dungeon heart. That means he does damage to my force of evil. If you notice here, I have no influence, so the fighter is going to give me a -1 influence. So I take an influence token, and I put it down here into the deficit area. Negative influence is kept here in your deficit. And now this fighter happily moves back home to the castle garrison, the fighter's castle garrison. And that's it for my round of combat. Well, I scored 3 points and essentially lost 1, although I did lose almost all of my units, which was not terribly great, but at least I got some prestige points out of that. Alright, that's one example of combat in Forces of Evil.